Hi, little justice leaders. I am so excited for the guest we have today. For those of you who don't know, my name is Shelby. I'm the creator of Little Justice Leaders. At Little Justice Leaders, we help schools, educators, and families build learning spaces rooted in justice and belonging. And today we're going to be talking all about justice and belonging with our guest, Dr. Nikki Lanier. Dr. Nikki is the author of Uncommon Ground, Guided Activities for Moms Raising Kids to Thrive Across Race, Culture, and Other Lines of Difference. And she is also the CEO and founder of Harper Slade. So we're going to get to learn all about Dr. Nikki's work and her amazing book, Uncommon Ground. So, Nikki, can you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work?
I have two paths to answer your question. Let me start with kind of the academic and professional path. I started out practicing law in South Florida. I did labor and employment law, and then I did human resources kind of all over the place. I've worked in the public and private sector. I've been the chief HR officer for three different organizations, Shelby, and just got a really deep understanding of how work works, both as a practitioner in human resources and as a human resource, right? And so just really begin to understand how what work does to us, what it feeds us, what it takes from us, what it affirms in us, and how all of that matters so deeply into how we are thinking about our own psyche and our own sense of worth. Oftentimes, is based on professional narratives. And anyway, I became a student of that, and that's what the lens that informed my practicing there. And then I worked for the Federal Reserve, and I did macroeconomics and monetary policy. And it was really in that capacity that changed everything for me, or cemented a lot of this work that I now do, because it was in that role that I understood how the changing demographics are affecting the United States, really affecting the world, but most closest to home is the United States, and the cost of hate and the cost of exclusion and what that has to do with the trajectory of the demographic shift ahead. So that's my professional path. My personal path is that I'm the child of two amazing souls who were very steeped in the civil rights movement, and I because I'm an only child, I listened to my parents intently my entire life, still do, and just really kind of fell on all their every word. They were extraordinarily connected parents. To me, they were so visible and accessible and talking very openly about their experiences and just being Black in the country that they've only known, their home country. And then I grew up on a historically Black college campus, but my parents are professors. So you got this professional anchoring that helped me understand the navigation of difference and how that works with work. And then you've got this very kind of personal anchoring around righting wrongs and being a leader in the plight toward mattering for people who have always had to fight for that in this country. And so that's kind of what gave rise to the work that I do today.
That's so beautiful, Nikki. And I love that you gave the context around your parents because we're going to be talking a bit about parents today. And so, with kind of that in mind, I'm curious why it is so important to you to help support parents to raise kids who are thriving across difference.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just struck by the era that we're in now, Shelby, and in many ways it's emblematic of the era that we've always been in. It's just kind of metastasized at this point. But, I have so many people in my communities. I have a number of groups that I work with. And the question that I get more often than not is, how did we get here? Who's responsible for this? And, how are these kids turning out this way? And why is there so much hate? And at the end of the day, you know, everybody is a product of something, a product of someone. All of us have been birthed literally by our mothers and by nurtured by caregivers who in our formative years had a great deal to do with how we believe, what we believe, how we perceive, how we derive perceptions, how we think about our thoughts, what things we think about, how we feel about what we think about, and then ultimately our actions. All of that is incubated, I would argue, well before you're 18. And so, as I think about the urgency of racial equity, I see that as work that all parents really must be about the business of, and particularly for white parents who I know struggle with support and an understanding of what exactly am I supposed to say to my kids? Do we just like, okay, well, let's have dinner and talk about racism today over our chicken nuggets? Like, what do you, no, we're not doing that. But like, how do I do it? And so the idea of supporting moms or caregivers, those who are influencing young minds, young hearts, and helping to mold young belief systems, giving them the tools and the support to ensure that there's a very thoughtful, dedicated and consistent path to make deposits in the hearts and minds of young people around difference, I think is the way to eventually erode this sting of isms in general and racism specifically.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And that is why we do the work we do with families and parents too, right? It starts in the home. And so often these conversations don't have to be as big and scary as we make them out to be.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it really is just, like you said, those small deposits of kind of the everyday choices that we make in what we do and how we interact and how we speak. And so absolutely, completely agree with you there. Speaking of kind of our worldviews and how we think about things and yeah, just how we frame our work. I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about your principle and methodology, grace over gotcha.
Uh, yes, grace over gotcha. So I do work that kind of falls under the umbrella of DEI, kind of sort of, although really my heart and my posture is how do I help the world prepare for the world that is coming, not the world that has been.
Yeah.
And I do that primarily through corporate entities, through corporate organizations, and then other groups of women's groups that I help to lead. But one of the things that I've noticed, and it's probably Shelby, you said it best, this is probably one of the areas that we are as humans are least comfortable talking about race.
Yeah.
And we have the least amount of experience doing it well. It feels
Mhm.
so awkward. I mean, just saying things like black people and white people out loud for many is just too much.
Yeah.
And yet those words matter so deeply in terms of how our world evolves in this country. So the idea is what I have witnessed, and maybe you have too, some of your viewers, is oftentimes when we're talking about race or racism, it's almost always in under this umbrella or in this cocoon of anger and frustration and name calling and shame wielding and guilt inducing, right?
Mhm.
And none of that is helpful if your goal is to really soften the venomous sting of racism, is to
Mhm.
change hearts and minds. It's only helpful if you wanna clap back and go off
Yeah.
and just you know what I mean? It doesn't restore or replenish
Right.
in ways that we really need. It doesn't get at belief systems, which I
Hmm.
think we have to finally get to. And so when I think about grace, it's really just making the decision every time you're engaging on a topic that has to be difficult for all of us. It is. It's just difficult. It's disruptive.
Hmm.
When you're talking about race and you're talking about especially racism and racial equity, doing so from the posture of presumptively assuming the person you're engaging with either is uncomfortable, is unaware, is not, happy in their own right in terms of like their own lived experiences and
Hmm.
maybe their own sense of shame and guilt that they don't know what to do with. I think it's going to be so important. It's so important that we embody a grace centered posture,
Yeah.
our advocacy, so that it doesn't become our goal in our engagements isn't about being right,
Hmm.
going off, or checking somebody or putting them in their place. Our goal is to plant a seed to illuminate another possibility.
Yeah.
Because for many of us, racism, whether we know it or not, is the only kind of default reality that we know.
Hmm.
Even though we hate it, most of
Yeah.
us don't like it. It's kind of all we've known. And
Yeah.
so the introduction of a modality and a belief system that pulls us out of that, even though that we don't like this thing, it's still new and different and therefore uncomfortable. And so
Hmm.
if that momentum is also met inside of language that is tearing you apart,
Yeah.
that's played this gotcha game, or you didn't say it right, or you didn't call them this, and you can't say that,
Yeah.
and the constant finger wagging, then we're never going to have the kind of connective tissue that I think we have to move the needle in a meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great point, and it's something we think about with kind of like all social issues, right? There is this idea of like it can be scary, and like you said, race and racism has become such or has always been such a hot button, difficult issue for so many people to talk
Yeah.
about, and then you add the layer of shame and you know a sense of not knowing enough or getting it wrong or fear, and that just makes it so much harder to break through a barrier that's already hard to break through because so many of us are already uncomfortable talking about race and racism. So I really love that kind of framework and way of thinking about it. And that's, how we try to think about our work of like inviting people in. You don't have to get it right 100% of the time. And I want to talk about how you bring these ideas to kids. And as you know, we work with so many kids and parents and teachers. And this book, Uncommon Ground, your book, is such a beautiful way of bringing this work to parents. So can you tell us a little bit about the process, where this idea came from, and how it came to life?
It actually was, I think, a year ago today, like this month. So it was April of last year. And I was visiting a friend in Chicago, and she and I were talking about microaggressions in the workplace as she's a Black woman, as Black women tend to do. I guess called, would you get shut out of? Who told you were too intimidating or you too well spoken, whatever. Anyway, so we're having this conversation and we're just talking about like what would make a difference? Like, under what circumstances could we shift generations such that who is being catapulted into workplaces come into the workplaces with a lived experience already that has made for them very clear the case that, Black and brown people are in fact human and the same kind of human as white, that, people who have a different religion or a different sexual orientation or different culture are in fact all human, meaning like same human. And I make it that my premise is that basic, Shelby, because I do think that there is still a number of folks in our country and our world that are not entirely convinced of the humanity, which is really the only way to explain some of the things that happen, right, to people of a different color, people of a darker hue. So, just really thinking deeply about that, we were just sitting in her living room, and I thought, man, if there could just be like a resource or some sort of guide that parents could have that allows them to feel comfortable in invoking these conversations and having these talks with their children without feeling like it's a whole production. And it's like a whole, like, we got to get a PowerPoint and a whiteboard to go over this. No, it's just like the daily stuff you're doing, the kind of stuff you're watching on TV, the kind of books that you're already reading to your kids, the field trips that you're already chaperoning, the debriefing of the kid's day that you're already engaging with. How can you pepper into those conversations and lift out an understanding of their view on race that's already percolating? Because as you know, Shelby, saying nothing about race or racism, let's see, your kids learn from one of two ways. Either society will teach them very clearly, or you will. That's it. And we all know that the societal narrative around difference is deficit, right? We know that. We know that the society will teach all of us that somehow if you are different from me, then therefore there is a deficiency, especially when it comes to race, and to a great extent gender. And so if we leave it to the societal devices, and that includes social media, then our children will go to this trajectory unbeknownst to us. So our job as parents is to keep them, right, centered and understanding the reality of the world that they are inheriting, which will be a blacker and browner world, right? Just because of demographics, but also to help normalize for them things like Black intellectualism, Black professionalism. Black people can be articulate. Black people have beautiful families and go on vacation and have wonderful lives and are extraordinarily potent and profound and have very healthy and wonderful marriages. And so like, and that's not what the societal teaching is. So the more you can get your kids exposed to that as just kind of a regular cadence, it helps them you leave your house by the time they're 18, having normalized the beauty of difference without being threatened by it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it is those little moments that add up over the years that matter so much and matter in a way that is different now that kids have access to, like you mentioned, social media and the
Yeah,
internet.
yeah,
Parents have way less control over the information their kids are taking in than they used to. And so, I hear all the time parents saying, like, I have no idea where they heard that or where they
where they
got
got
that
that
from.
from. Yeah,
And so we just have to be, even more mindful of what messages they might be taking in and
that's
how actively we have to be counteracting those. So I'm so excited. So the book is made up of a series of prompts for families and parents. I'm curious if you have any like favorite prompts from the book, or
yeah.
ones that have resonated.
I love I mean, I know this may not be the best at this moment, but the Cosby Show, different world prompts,
Mhm. Okay.
because I often talk about, Bill Cosby notwithstanding, the fact of the matter
Yeah.
is the Cosby Show was super prolific in terms
Yeah.
of what it stood up in
Mhm.
the psyche and the visualization of a Black family.
Yeah.
So, I talk about, like, it's important for your children to see Black people specifically, but Black and brown outside of the stereotype, outside of the societal narrative
Yeah.
as much as possible,
Yeah.
outside of being a servant, outside of being a sports figure, outside of being an entertainer,
Yeah.
outside of or of being consistent to the stereotype in negative ways.
Yeah.
And so I talk about like the Cosby Show, Different World, especially because it it is such a beautiful example of intellectualism
Mhm.
that with people of color,
Yeah.
married to people of color. It's
Mhm.
health of Black marriage. It's the health of Black family, beautifully articulate and well rounded,
Yeah.
well traveled, well read Black children.
Mhm.
Um, it shows us thinking critically, especially a different world. It shows us in places where we're thinking critically, we're operating with discretion and wisdom and judgment, but also levity and joy and
Yeah.
all the things. There's no suffering, right? It's not a
Mhm.
suffering story, which
Yeah.
tends to be attached to the plight of Black and Brown America.
Yeah.
So those two shows in particular, I talk a lot about. Like, it really, it's not just watch every Black show. Like, don't.
Right.
It's not that. It's certain shows, like, you gotta make sure your kids are oriented, and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is another great example.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
those kinds of things are super important for your kids to get regular exposure to,
Yeah.
and you help them debrief it. You help them talk
Mhm.
about it. "What'd you see? Oh my gosh, what a nice red sweater. I wonder where she got that red sweater." Like, it'd be interesting to see what your kid says, or,
Yeah.
"What'd you think about Claire's, advice to Vanessa when she came home late? What do you think about that?" So it's just, again, it's just kinda like, what, not only do they get to absorb it, but they get to see their parents find it normal,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
They see their parents are
Mhm.
engaging with it in a way that feels normal and not exercised and like a big deal.
Yes, yes. I love this emphasis on like normalcy because I think, like we've mentioned, so often white parents in particular feel like it has to be some huge conversation or this awkward thing to talk about. And it's like, no, it really can just be normal. It doesn't have to be rooted in suffering and
Yes.
history and
Yes.
pain and oppression. I mean, we need to talk about those things too, but also like, especially if you're just getting started, it can be fun. It can be just everyday life. It can be just kids living their life on a show that happen to be Black, and it's doesn't have to be about race, right? It can just be like normalizing everyone having human experiences that we all
Yeah.
have, which include a huge range of things, including joy and happiness and success and achievement and all the things. So
That's it.
I
That's
love
it.
this. I love this emphasis. I think it's so important to reframe these conversations to remind parents that it does not have to be heavy all the time. And in fact, if it's heavy all the time, then you need to infuse some joy and some light and some levity
Absolutely.
into it. So thank you so much, Nikki. This conversation has been so good. Is there a way for our community to find your work and support you?
Yeah, so I'm on all the socials. So Nikki Lanier, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. It's under,
Okay.
I think, Dr. Nikki Lanier. The book is available like everywhere. Honestly, if you just Google it, it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and something else. I can't remember. Anyway, it's everywhere. So if you just
Perfect.
Google Uncommon Ground, Nikki Lanier, you'll be able to find it. And
Yeah.
hopefully your viewers and your readers, listeners will be able to use it as a resource. And I just want to thank you, Shelby, for this moment. I don't take it lightly that you've given me a beautiful opportunity to be in front of the audience that you've wonderfully curated. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for being here. I will link all of those things below so folks can find them very easily. And if you are here and you care about social justice and education, don't forget to subscribe to Little Justice Leaders and join our community. So I'll also link some ways to get involved with our work if you want to, keep it going and continue alongside and after you do the workbook. So thank you again, Nikki. We will talk soon.
All right.